What if I told you there's a frog that has been alive on Earth for over 100 million years, but scientists didn't even know it existed until the year 2003? What if this frog spends almost its entire life hiding beneath your feet, and you could walk over its home 1,000 times and never know it was there? Stick around, because this animal is stranger than anything you've seen in a nature documentary. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why researchers call it a living fossil. Deep in the Western Ghats Mountains of India, in the states of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, there lives a creature that looks like it shouldn't exist. It has a bloated, round body the color of a dark plum. It has a tiny pointed snout that looks almost exactly like a pig's nose. Its eyes are small and set close together, and its legs are short and stubby, nothing like the long, springy legs you'd expect on a frog built for jumping. This is the purple frog, and its scientific name is Nasikabatrachus sahyadrensis. If that name feels like a mouthful, don't worry, because most people just call it the purple frog, the pig-nosed frog, or the Mahabali frog. There's actually a beautiful piece of local folklore tied to this frog too. In Kerala, it's sometimes called the Mahabali frog, named after a legendary king from Hindu mythology who is said to visit the earth once a year from the underworld during the harvest festival of Onam. Locals notice that this strange purple creature also seems to rise from beneath the earth once a year, almost like clockwork, right around that same time of year when the first monsoon rains soak the soil. Whether that connection is coincidence or not, it captures something true about this animal. It really does live like a creature from the underworld, appearing briefly and then vanishing again for the rest of the year. Here's the first mind-blowing fact. This frog spends almost its entire life underground. Not just a few days here and there, not just hiding under a rock during the day. This animal lives buried in soil, sometimes several meters deep, for nearly the entire year. It only comes to the surface for about 2 weeks, once a year, when the monsoon rains arrive. Think about that for a second. For 50 weeks out of 52, this frog is completely invisible to the world, tunneling through damp earth. And then for a tiny window of time, it emerges, breeds, and disappears again. So why did it take scientists until 2003 to officially describe this species? The answer is simple. It's incredibly hard to find something that almost never comes out of the ground. Local villagers in Kerala had actually known about this strange purple creature for generations. They'd occasionally dig it up while working in their fields or planting crops, but it wasn't formally studied and classified by the scientific community until researchers Biju and Bosuit described it in 2003. When they did, it sent shockwaves through the world of biology, and here's why. Genetic testing revealed that the purple frog's closest living relatives aren't found anywhere in India. They're found on the Seychelles Islands off the coast of East Africa, thousands of kilometers away. The purple frog belongs to a family called Nasikabatrachus, and this lineage is believed to have split off from its African relatives somewhere between 130 and 180 million years ago. That's not a typo. This frog's ancestors were around during the age of dinosaurs. How is that even possible? The answer lies in plate tectonics. Back then, India, Africa, and the Seychelles were all part of one giant supercontinent called Gondwana. As Gondwana slowly broke apart over tens of millions of years, India drifted away, eventually crashing into Asia to form the Himalayas. But the ancestors of the purple frog were already isolated on that drifting landmass, and they kept evolving in complete isolation for well over 100 million years. That means this frog has essentially been living a secret underground life since before flowering plants dominated the planet. It survived the asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs. It survived ice ages. It survived the rise of mammals, the evolution of humans, and pretty much all of recorded history, all while barely anyone noticed it was there. Now let's talk about how this frog actually survives underground, because its body is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering built for exactly one purpose: digging. Unlike most frogs, which have long back legs built for jumping and swimming, the purple frog has short, powerful limbs tipped with hardened spade-like projections. These act almost like tiny shovels. The frog uses them to dig backward into loose, damp soil, disappearing beneath the surface in a matter of seconds. Its small eyes and reduced need for vision make sense too, because when you spend your life underground, eyesight becomes far less useful than the ability to sense vibrations and tunnel efficiently. Even its pointed snout serves a purpose. Scientists believe the frog uses its snout to help push through soil and to sense its surroundings while burrowing. And that long, fluted tongue we mentioned earlier isn't just for show either. The purple frog primarily eats ants and termites, and it doesn't even need to come to the surface to find them. It hunts underground, snaking its tongue into termite mounds and ant colonies buried in the earth, slurping up insects without ever seeing daylight. Imagine an animal that can live, eat, and survive without ever needing to see the sun for the vast majority of its life. That's the reality for this species. Its skin is another underrated survival tool. Living underground means constant exposure to damp soil, fungi, bacteria, and burrowing insects that could easily infect an animal with softer, more vulnerable skin. Amphibian skin in general is highly permeable and sensitive, which is usually a weakness, but the purple frog has adapted to thrive in this damp, high-pressure environment where many other animals simply couldn't survive. Researchers studying fossorial amphibians point out that species like this one often produce mucus and skin secretions that help protect against the very bacteria and fungi that thrive in warm, wet soil, essentially giving the frog a built-in defense system for a lifestyle almost no other frog on Earth has fully committed to. Scientists sometimes compare the purple frog to another famous living fossil, the coelacanth, a deep-sea fish once thought to have gone extinct alongside the dinosaurs until a living specimen was discovered off the coast of South Africa in 1938. Both animals represent ancient evolutionary lineages that quietly persisted for tens of millions of years, while the rest of the world changed dramatically around them. The coelacanth did it in the deep ocean. The purple frog did it just a few feet beneath the forest floor. In both cases, an entire branch of the tree of life survived by disappearing from view, and in both cases, humans had no idea these animals still existed until relatively recently. Before we go further, if you're enjoying learning about one of the strangest amphibians on the planet, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and tap the like button on this video. It genuinely helps this channel keep making videos about incredible, lesser-known animals like this one, and it only takes 2 seconds. All right? Let's keep going, because the story of the purple frog gets even stranger. So we know this frog spends most of the year hidden underground. But when does it actually come out, and why? The answer is tied directly to India's monsoon season. Depending on the exact location, monsoon rains arrive either between April and August or between October and December. When the very first heavy rains of the season soak the ground, something remarkable happens. Male purple frogs begin to emerge, but here's the twist. They often don't fully surface. Instead, they call out to attract females from within their underground burrows or from just beneath the surface near streams. Their call is nothing like the melodic croaking you'd hear from a pond frog on a summer night. Instead, purple frogs produce a series of low, pulsing grunts, a strange and almost otherworldly sound. What makes this even stranger is that purple frogs have no external ears. Scientists still aren't entirely sure how they detect these calls, but current research suggests they may sense sound through vibrations traveling through the ground itself, essentially feeling the calls rather than hearing them the way we do. Once a male and female purple frog find each other, mating happens quickly, often near temporary streams and pools created by the monsoon rains. The female lays her eggs directly into these flowing streams, sometimes producing as many as 3,000 eggs in a single breeding event, and then almost as quickly as they appeared, the adult frogs vanish again, disappearing back into the earth, not to be seen again until next year's rains arrive. But the story doesn't end there, because the offspring of the purple frog are just as bizarre as their parents. When the eggs hatch, they become tadpoles. But these aren't your typical pond tadpoles lazily swimming around still water. Purple frog tadpoles are adapted to survive in fast-moving streams and even behind waterfalls. They develop specialized mouths that function almost like a suction cup, similar to what you'd see on a suckerfish, allowing them to cling tightly to rocks in rushing water so they don't get swept away. Using tiny teeth, these tadpoles scrape algae off rock surfaces as their food source, clinging to slick, wet stones in the middle of powerful currents. This stage of their life lasts around 100 to 120 days before they metamorphose into small versions of the adult frog, grow their digging limbs, and begin their own journey underground, where they'll spend the rest of their long lives. And when we say long lives, we mean it. Some estimates suggest purple frogs can live remarkably long lifespans compared to most amphibians, with some sources pointing to lifespans that could stretch anywhere from several decades up to a century under the right conditions. When you consider that this species spends the overwhelming majority of that time buried in soil, safe from predators, temperature extremes, and drying out, it starts to make a lot more sense why this survival strategy has worked for over 100 million years. Let's also talk about why the purple frog isn't the only underground dwelling frog on the planet, but why it's still one of the most extreme examples. Fossorial frogs, meaning frogs that live a burrowing lifestyle, actually exist in several parts of the world. Australia is home to the giant burrowing frog. Parts of Africa have several species of shovel-nosed frogs that dig into soil to escape harsh, dry conditions, but most of these species still surface regularly to feed or to escape flooding burrows. The purple frog takes this lifestyle to an extreme level rarely seen anywhere else in the animal kingdom, spending nearly the entire year hidden away, feeding underground, and only breaking the surface for a couple of weeks total. What's also fascinating is how specialized the purple frog's body has become compared to its ancient relatives. Fossil evidence and genetic studies suggest that ancestors of this frog family looked quite different millions of years ago, likely far less adapted to a fully underground lifestyle. Over an enormous span of time, natural selection gradually favored individuals with shorter limbs for digging, smaller eyes since sight became less important, tougher skin to handle constant soil contact, and a body shape built for tunneling rather than jumping. In other words, the strange, almost comical-looking frog we see today, the one people sometimes jokingly compare to a purple balloon with legs, is actually the product of one of the most successful and specialized evolutionary paths in the entire amphibian world. In 2021, scientists made headlines again when they discovered a second species in the same genus, this one named Nasikabatrachus bhupathi, in honor of a respected Indian herpetologist named Subramaniam Bhupathi, who tragically lost his life while researching wildlife in the Western Ghats in 2014. This newly discovered species, often nicknamed Bhupathi's purple frog, shares the same striking purple skin, but with a distinctive light blue ring around its eyes. Like its relative, it lives the vast majority of its life underground and only emerges to mate when the rains begin. The discovery proved that this bizarre, secretive lifestyle wasn't just a one-time evolutionary fluke. It was a successful survival strategy that this frog family has been repeating for well over 100 million years. Sadly, despite surviving mass extinctions, continental drift, and the rise and fall of countless other species, the purple frog now faces one of its greatest threats yet, and that threat is habitat destruction caused by human activity. The Western Ghats, where this frog lives, is under increasing pressure from deforestation, agricultural expansion, and infrastructure development because the purple frog depends so heavily on specific soil conditions, moisture levels, and access to seasonal streams for breeding. Even small disruptions to its habitat can have devastating effects on local populations. Researchers currently estimate there are roughly 130 known breeding sites for this species, and only about half of those sites currently have any form of protection. Because the species already has such a narrow window for breeding and reproduction each year, any disturbance during that critical 2-week period, like stream pollution, construction, or habitat clearing, can prevent successful reproduction for an entire year or even longer. Climate change adds another layer of risk on top of habitat loss. The purple frog's entire reproductive strategy is timed almost perfectly around the arrival of monsoon rains. If rainfall patterns shift, arrive later than usual, become less predictable, or weaken in intensity, the streams these frogs depend on for breeding may not form properly or may not last long enough for tadpoles to complete their development. An animal that survived the asteroid that ended the age of dinosaurs could ultimately be threatened by a shifting rainy season, which is a sobering thought when you consider everything else this species has already lived through across 130 million years of history. Conservationists working in the Western Ghats have started pushing for expanded protection of known breeding streams, better regulation of sand mining and construction near these waterways, and increased research funding to simply understand how many purple frogs are left and where they're located. Because this species is so difficult to study, spending nearly all its life hidden underground, we genuinely don't have a precise population count. That uncertainty itself is part of the danger. It's difficult to protect a species and difficult to know if conservation efforts are working when the animal in question is almost never seen. This is part of why documenting and understanding animals like the purple frog matters so much. A species that spent over 100 million years evolving in near total isolation could disappear within a matter of decades simply because we didn't know enough about it or didn't act quickly enough to protect the places it depends on. Every stream, every patch of forest soil, every seasonal rain pool in the Western Ghats could be part of the fragile network this ancient species relies on to survive. So next time you're walking through a forest or even your own backyard after a heavy rain, take a moment to think about what might be living just beneath your feet. There could be entire hidden worlds of creatures, like the purple frog, ancient survivors that have outlasted dinosaurs, ice ages, and continents drifting apart, quietly going about their business completely out of sight. The purple frog reminds us that some of the most extraordinary stories on this planet aren't happening in the sky or across the ocean. They're happening quietly, patiently, underground, in the dark, where almost nobody ever thinks to look. If this video blew your mind even a little bit, that's exactly the reaction I was hoping for. Nature is full of creatures just as strange, ancient, and incredible as this one, and I cover them regularly on this channel. So if you want to keep discovering animals that sound made up but are completely real, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment and let me know what surprised you most about the purple frog, whether it was the 100 million year history the underground lifestyle, or those strange suction cup tadpoles clinging to waterfalls. And if you enjoyed this, give the video a like before you go. It genuinely helps more people discover these incredible stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.